The Truth Girls. The Truth Girls.
Hi everyone. Well, as you probably know, riots broke out over the weekend in London and spread to surrounding suburbs very quickly and have continued to rage basically for the past 4 days. People are raiding and looting shops for things that they don't really need, like TVs and iPods and whatever, and strangely the police hasn't been able to get the situation under control. So looking at this, I gotta ask myself, why are people running amok like this? Is it for some political cause? Well, officially what sparked this was the death of Mark Duggan, a young black man who was shot by police while sitting in a taxi. I have a bit of a hard time believing this because only a few people in his neighborhood, held a vigil and are demanding a police inquiry and justice for Mark Duggan, and even fewer people left wreaths. You don't see all these rioters running around chanting slogans about justice for Mark Duggan or holding up signs or anything like that. When the riots happened in the Middle East in the last year, it seemed that the cause was quite clear. The people who were involved in the protesting or rioting or uprising, as you might call it, had clear demands and clear leaders, and it was pretty obvious what they were asking for, as in, they wanted Hosni Mubarak to step down, for example. But in this case, it's not clear, and I don't really believe that the death of Mark Duggan was the catalyst for this mayhem. And what's even more suspicious is people in the neighborhood where Duggan was killed reported that a police surveillance vehicle had been taking video footage of that street for several days before the incident happened, and that also they had seen plainclothes armed policemen or agents hiding in the bushes, and that the taxi in which Mark Duggan had been a passenger was taken away from the scene and then later returned for tests. So I have to wonder, were they planning to kill someone and then use that story as a cover to explain why they'd then be having riots, which were really instigated by provocateurs? And why has this been going on for several days? Are the police dragging their feet? Russia Today reported that the parliament was going to have a debate on what to do. A debate? At a time like this? Wouldn't this be a good time to, not sit around and discuss things, but take action? I'm not an advocate of using crowd control, water cannons, and things like this, but it looks like they intentionally let things get out of hand, and they're still letting them be out of hand because they could use, sound cannons or water cannons or rubber bullets or whatever, but for some reason they're not doing that. And in this same report on Russia Today, they're saying that the people who are engaging in these riots are young people who are just basically looking for excitement, and that the problem is that there aren't enough cops around to keep them in check because there have been cuts to the police force and because all the money's being spent in Afghanistan. And so what they should probably do is not spend so much money on foreign wars and then hire more police officers, because obviously people can't, manage themselves. Here's some footage showing mob mentality taking over after a few men initiate an attack on police, pushing them back. But who are these men dressed in black with face coverings and shiny white sneakers? Could they be agents provocateurs sent in to herd the black sheep into an attack? Could be, and the following report appears to confirm my suspicions, as youths are claiming that they have been offered money to go looting by people posing as journalists. And meanwhile, Prison Planet says that the police have been ordered to stand down. Well, after the G20 that we just had here in Canada last year, this kind of scenario is starting to look all too familiar to me. Member of Parliament Gerard Batten says that what we're seeing is a display of pure criminality, and that the solution would be to bring the troops from Afghanistan back home and deploy them against British citizens. He says, let's get our troops back into this country and actually put them on the streets, supporting the police in order to crush this criminal insurrection, which to me translates as, it's time for us to have martial law in London. He also says that it's not that there's a lack of jobs, there's a lack of willingness on the part of these people to do them. And then on top of that, they have lax laws in Britain that make it very hard for anybody to actually get arrested, and so these people can pretty much do whatever they want. Now, I have a hard time believing this. London is like the biggest Big Brother city in the world. They've got cameras all over the place on every corner. And so what would be the point of the government spending all that money on these millions of cameras and then not having laws in place to enable them to arrest people when they do something wrong? I have a hard time believing that. Rather, it looks to me like this is being intentionally allowed to happen so that they can bring in the police state. Britain is always like a kind of pilot project. They were the first to get all those surveillance cameras. They were the first to get the nudie scanners. And they had complete gun bans. So maybe they'll be the first Western country to go under martial law. They could be the first living model of the New World Order martial law police state. So again, what are these rioters fighting against or fighting for? Justice for Mark Duggan? Doesn't look like it to me. Maybe it's backlash against the austerity measures that were imposed in 2010. Maybe they're just so angry that they can't afford iPods and widescreen TVs that they've taken to pillaging local shops. Maybe they just want free booze. Or maybe this situation has been designed and instigated by the globalist elite to bring martial law to London, Britain, and then the rest of the Western world. Well, given the evidence, I'd have to say that the last option is probably the correct one. So I guess we'll see what happens. Well, thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.